Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come support me, love on me. I appreciate all of you so very much for clicking on my video. I know that you don't have to, so it warms my heart so very much that you do. Who's tired of that intro? I think that intro's tired. I think we ought to find a different intro. Welcome back to my channel, y'all, and welcome back to another installment in the Palette Roulette series, in which I let an app choose the palette that I will be working with for the week and come back to you later on in the week or at the end of the week and let you know how the palette worked for me. Last week, my app chose the ABH Prism palette for me to use. This is what the exterior packaging of the palette looks like. It is a beautiful felt covered cardboard palette with this beautiful prism like thing there. It says prism in the little lines. I think that this palette is just beautiful. I love the fact that it is a black felt because it gets less dirty, but it does get super fuzzy. I don't know if you guys can see that. The inside of the palette looks like this. It did come with a dual-ended brush, but as you guys know, if you watched my last video where I discussed the Modern Renaissance palette, which I can link up in the cards, I don't typically use dual-ended brushes, and ABH dual-ended brushes are honestly not my favorite. So typically the palettes that I have that come with a dual-ended brush, those brushes go into a drawer, and that's kind of where they sit because I don't use them. Each one of the ABH palettes like this has a nice size mirror on the one side, and they do flip all the way back on themselves, which I can appreciate. I never use the mirror, and even if I did, it would be easier to hold it like this up to my face than it is to hold it like this up to my face, just because the palettes can tend to get a little heavy, and holding them like this, like they're only heavy on one end instead of on all ends, and I almost dropped that palette. So this was a holiday, I think 2017 palette. This palette came out shortly after Subculture did, and there was a huge amount of uproar with Subculture, so those of us who purchased this palette were wondering if it was going to be the same kind of formula that the Subculture palette had. If I'm being honest with you, I did not mind the Subculture palette in the slightest, so it was neither here nor there for me. However, this being a holiday palette was one of those palettes where everybody was like, why though? It doesn't really look very holiday-esque, to be honest, and it was kind of a different level of color that they've used before. But with that being said, it is really just a neutral palette with a few pops of color. Some very similar shades in this to other palettes are Eden, looks very much like Roxy in Subculture. Parallel looks very much like Fudge, which was also in Subculture, and Lure looks very much like Bon Fresco in the Modern Renaissance palette. That is a palette that I just went through. Same shade name that I have issue with saying, but oh, and Saturn. Saturn looks very much like Realger in Modern Renaissance. So you have these two shades and these two shades here that you could find really great dupes for in other Modern Renaissance or in other ABH palettes. Sphere is the only kind of like out of the box kind of color in this palette, but I have to tell you that this has to be built up and built up and built up in order to look decently like that shade on your eyes, even with a white primer on your eyes. So this is like any other ABH palette. It does have, woo, I almost dropped it again, God. It does have 14 shades in it, and in these shades you will find 2 duochromes, mostly mattes, and then there are like 5 metallics as well. This is, like I said, just a basically a neutral palette with some prismatic metals in it. It does have this unique to most palettes pop of color in there. It is a full pigment formula like the Subculture formula was. It did come with the dual-ended brush just like any other ABH palette, and it was a limited edition palette. These shimmers in here are, well, let's start with the duochromes. The duochromes are Lucid here and this one here called Dimension. And Dimension is probably one of my, it probably is exactly my favorite shade in the palette. This is what it looks like. Depending on your eye look, it could look very purple, it could look very gray. It's kind of got a lavender undertone to it. It's very, very, very pretty. Lucid is this white shadow that kind of looks gold on your eyes. I don't really find that it shifts a lot, to be honest. It is pretty when you can get it to work. I used it a lot as an inner corner highlight just because that's what it works best for. I also, I think one eye look had me with it in my brow bone. And then we have your shimmers. You have Pyramid here, which is this gold that I do have on my eyes today. Throne here, which is a green, which might as well honestly be black. The undertone in it is black, and that's really, once you put it on your eyes, really, really all you can see that sticks well to your eyes. Same with Throne up here. It is blue as you see it in the pan, but once you put it on your eyes, it might as well be a black. I do have a couple eye looks with it in there, and it just basically looks like a black. Sphinx is a really pretty copper gold color, and then Eternal is more like a copper penny, like a brand new copper penny shade, and the rest of them are ultra matte. They do blend super easily. One that I did have a little bit more trouble with than the rest is Obsidian, which is this black shade here. It just has a slightly different texture to it than the other mattes do, and it, I mean, it blends well, but it just has a little bit of a scratchier, more textured feel than the other mattes in here do. I will say that without eye primer, this functioned poorly. It didn't really stay on my eyes very well. I do have an eye look that I will probably post a picture of the eye in there that Throne was on the lid, and like very shortly into my day, I have a picture of what that looked like on my lid after I had been wearing it for about an hour and a half at that point in time. I was super disgusted with that eye look. I ended up taking the makeup off. I was just not impressed. Throne is a really pretty color if you can get the green to stand out and if it would stay on your eyes. But that day I didn't put any primer on my eye, and it just kind of went away. So you really have to have an eye primer to use these, and you really have to have a tackier eye primer. The tackier it was, the better I found it functioned for especially the metallic shades. I will also say that if you're not one that's used to wetting your brush down for any kind of metallic or shimmer, then it'll be an extra step in your eye application, because they really do perform better wet than they do dry on a dry brush, but they also perform better than that with just your finger. I am not a person who likes dipping my fingers into my palettes. I do for these videos for purposes of swatches and maybe showing you some of my favorite shades in the palette, but I don't on a day-to-day basis like using my fingers to apply eyeshadow. So I did use them with a wet brush every single time, but that's not new to my everyday application of a shimmer anyways. I always wet my brush for a shimmer, always, regardless of what shimmer it is or what palette I'm getting it out of, except for the shimmer I might put into my brow bone. I forgot mascara today. So like I was saying in showing you guys these colors, Throne here, and this one is called Osiris, I think. They might as well be black. That's how they appeared on the eye. It's not a bad palette. I really love the palette. I love some of the eye looks that I got out of the palette. It's just a different palette, and it's not one that I can see using every single day. Also, there's not, I mean, this Unity shade right here, I used every day to set my primer in my you know, on my eye. I use this one a lot in my crease. And when I wasn't using this one in my crease, I was using this one in my crease just because they're the two best crease shades. And then I would go in and deepen up the crease with either this Saturn shade or this parallel shade right here. Those two also became my outer V colors, and then topped with a obsidian on the very outer V. Today I'm not wearing obsidian at all. This brown gets really deep brown, and I love that about it. The orange Saturn also gets super, super dark orange. So I do have an eye look where that is the basis of my eye look, is orange. So these are a little more firmly pressed, I feel like, than the Subculture palette is, but they kind of rank right in there with Modern Renaissance. They are still a bit powdery, so you're gonna have to watch for fallout on your face. Do your eyes first, those kind of things. A lot of the shades in here are a dark shade, so if you're doing your base first and then go into your eyes, you're probably gonna end up redoing your base. But it's not a bad palette. I really do love it. I think that it was odd for a holiday release, if I'm being honest, but I'm not mad at this palette. It's definitely not one that's leaving my makeup collection anytime soon. My favorite eye look was in combination with this on the lid, as well as this in the outer corner and the lid and in the crease. And then I believe it was this color here in the upper parts of my brow bone area and my upper crease. Let's look at some swatches that I have for you, and then we'll go from there. So this shade right here is Lucid. That is one of the duochrome shades in the palette, and it is the white shade in the palette with a champagne to gold shift. This one here is Eden. It is an ultra matte, kind of really like peachy based. This one here is called Unity. It's the one that I use to set my primer every single day. This one here is Sphinx. It is a metallic shade. This one is Osiris. It is also a metallic shade. It is the blue one that might as well be black, because that's kind of what it looks like. This one is Sphere. This is built up three swipes across. That is built up just so that you guys could see it. And then this one here is Obsidian. See what I mean about it? It just has a weird texture to it, and it kind of looks a little bit patchy for a black. I don't typically have a lot of problems with blacks, and especially not blacks from ABH, but that one I did kind of run into some problems with. On this arm, I have this one here, which is Dimension. That is my favorite shade in the palette, and it is also one of the duochromes. This one here is Parallel, and it is just a matte brown. This one is Pyramid, and it is a really pretty yellow gold color, which is on my eyes today. This one here is Throne. It looks very nice on my arm in a swatch, but this is again built up 3 swatches into that so that you could see the green in there. It might as well really be a black. This one here is called Saturn. It is a matte orange. This one is called Eternal. It is a matte light, or I mean not a matte, a shimmer copper penny metallic color. And then this one here is called Lure, and it is really a mauve tone color. That is that one right there. My favorite matte in the palette was probably Lure, and my favorite shimmer-esque was definitely Dimension. The other shimmers in the palette, like truly I could do without, to be honest. They didn't really perform as well as I would love them to be. I remember when I saw the palette on Trend Mood, and I had just purchased, I think Subculture came out in August, and this one came out in October for holiday. And I remember seeing it thinking, oh, that is the weirdest color story I have ever seen in my life. But I was also in love with ABH palettes at the time and really, really wanted to get it. I found that it was easier to get than I thought it was going to be. A lot of the times ABH shadow palettes tend to like sell out rather quickly. That one didn't. It didn't at all. I could get it rather easily. It wasn't a problem. And then I got it and I was like, what do I do with this? hindsight is everything, and if I had known then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have purchased it, just because I don't have all the ABH eyeshadow palettes. I don't choose to get them anymore, and I think Soft Glam was the first one that I chose to say no to, and I kind of wish Prism had been the first that I chose to say no to. Not because I don't like the palette. I do like the palette. When I use it, I have fun with it, but because it's just such a weird color story that it doesn't really fit in with any kind of eye look I tend to do on a day-to-day basis. So it's not a palette that I pull often. What I am thankful for in this series is that I was able to pull it and work with it and remember why I liked it, and remember that there are colors in this palette, shades in this palette, that are unique to my collection that I absolutely love. With that being said, it is a pressed pigment palette, just like Subculture, so you are going to run into shades in this palette that stain your eyes. I haven't really had much of a problem with it, but the Saturn shade, the really deep orange shade, would be the one that I would think would do it the worst because of just the sheer color of it. Obsidian, I also noticed, was kind of a skin staining shade, especially when I tried to pull them off my arms and my fingers. So yes. So let's go ahead and pull the palette for next week. For those of you who are unaware, I have a Samsung Note 9, and I have an app that I I got for free through the Play Store, that is just basically a Wheel of Fortune app. The person who lended inspiration to this video series on my channel uses her Palette a Week series as a decluttering series. I don't do that for mine, but she has an iPhone, and she uses a very similar app that she picked up in your guys's app store. So whether you have an Android phone or an iOS system, you can pick up an app that's just like this. This is what my wheel looks like. It's just a spin the wheel of fortune type app, and you download it, you pick the wheel that you want to use, put all of the things that you want it to decide for you into the wheel, and then to spin it, you just press that button in the middle and it spins. So the palette that it chose for me to use next week is the Lunar Beauty Greek Goddess palette, which I am actually kind of excited for because I have not used that palette yet. Let me go get it. All right, so for those of you who don't know, I'm in love with Manny. MUA, not in love with, but I do love him. He is an amazing content creator in my mind, and he is the YouTube creator that I watched the most when I first started doing makeup, and he taught me a lot about makeup application. So I have purchased everything so far that he has come out with his brand Lunar Beauty. So this is the next palette in our Palette Roulette series. It is the Lunar Beauty Greek Goddess palette. This was his, I think, holiday collection last holiday, and this is what the palette looks like. It's just a basic palette, if I have to be honest. I remember thinking, wow, that doesn't look very holiday either. Our last one was not holiday based on the weird color scheme. This one's not holiday based on the very basic color scheme, but I get where he was coming from with this. So I will be reviewing this palette and the looks that I was able to create with it next week in my Palette Roulette series. For those of you who do not know what this series is about, I do have all the information in my drop down box. I've also somewhere in this video put my first Palette Roulette video in here, and I have the whole Palette Roulette series playlist linked in my box as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you liked this video enough that you're giving it a big thumbs up. I also hope that you liked me or the contents of this video enough that you're considering subscribing to my channel. It would mean the world to me for you to do so. I do upload content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Sunday, dependent on my work schedule, or Sunday, I guess, dependent on my work schedule. So I really hope that you'll also consider hitting that bell so you're notified every single time I upload. I thank you guys again so much for joining me, and I hope that you're having an amazing June and that you have an amazing week. And until next time, bye guys.